And we are going to dive deep into a great conversation about the Port of Shelton today. We got Wendy Smith in studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And we're talking about the Port of Shelton. It is wet out there, so I know your crews are working hard in this mess.
They are. Unfortunately, you can never catch all the leaks, but they've been bounding around from property to property. This morning, they're headed out to Johns Prairie because that poor old mill site, and so Lynch Creek is really struggling. We do have roofers out there doing some work on one of their buildings, so that may help that we can gear them over to the other building, but they're struggling pretty big.
Yeah,
so we're praying that some of the work we did in the sunny weather will hold, but it's you just never know.
Do you guys do a lot of that kind of preemptive looks? You'll see these storms and you'll say, well, we got to remember this so we can talk about it so it doesn't happen again. Is there a lot of that happens?
There is, and I think more than that, you learn year to year, what's happening, and if you haven't done some sort of a roof fix throughout the year, you know that you've got to tar it or do whatever. So they did some work yesterday because it didn't rain. They were able to get on one of the roofs of one of the older buildings and do some patching, and you just pray that pray it sealed and it held, and until, because even the roofers right now, they're not coming out to do work.
Yeah,
I mean, that stuff doesn't work in this kind of weather. So right now it's just kind of an emergency runaround. So
interesting.
Just pray that it all works. But
last week, Dick Taylor was here, and we were talking about the small port, the SPPA, Small Public Ports Association.
So it's the Washington Public Ports Association, the WPPA, and we all went to the Small Ports Conference last week in Leavenworth, and it's always a really great conference every year. They hold it in October, and there's really no definition of a small port. We consider ourselves a small port. I think Seattle does not consider themselves
I
a
would
small
hope
port,
not.
But there's no official, you aren't allowed to come if you're Port of Seattle or any of that. So it's very well attended, actually so well attended that we're going to have to look for possibly a different venue to hold our small ports. It started with, I think a couple of years ago, it was about 60 people that came, and this year it was 120.
Oh, wow.
So it's very well attended. It's geared to the problems that ports with very little staff, which is like ours, very little in the way of budget. So here from our county, we attended, all three commissioners. I attended in Brandon, our engineering manager. Port of Allen had several representatives, a couple of their commissioners and their executive director and their office manager came. Port of Dewato I saw 4 people with name tags. I never actually ran into them, and so I never got to talk to them, but they had a representative. So it's good. They gear it more instead of Port of Seattle. We've got millions and millions of dollars to pour into an airport. They gear it to the very little problems of, public works and different scenarios that small ports go through. And Friday morning of that conference is always probably the best. They do a real life scenario and kind of act as you're a port of somewhere, and you have to go to legislators and get money put in a budget fund to move, to be able to do a ferry terminal or something. And so they do very real life scenarios, and it's pretty interesting. So
why is it in Leavenworth?
Central.
Is that
Central?
Okay.
Yeah, they picked a central location, so it was just a good way to get people from all, and really, I mean, it's from all sides of the state. You got Port of Sunnyside, you got Port of Kennewick, you got Port of Benton. I mean, you got everybody there from all, I think, Port of Pend Oreille. I mean, there's all kinds of little guys that come because it's central, but ran into a problem with too many people coming. We're going to maybe have to look, and so everybody kind of wants to keep it central so everybody can get there. But
these conversations that we've had for years on the air, and I still have a hard time wrapping my head around a port that's not near water.
I know.
And, I'm working on it, though.
And a lot of them do have water, like we have water. But there's a lot that don't. There's some that are just an airport or some that are just an industrial space. Yeah. So, it's just interesting.
Interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys talk about, and I know staffing levels, and you guys have a pretty good staff at the Port of Shelton. When it comes to those smaller ports, do they work towards, memorandums of understanding where people can share resources, workers that could work this one and work at this one as well? I mean, is that some of the stuff they talk about too?
It's rare.
Job sharing, I guess.
Yeah, it's rare to go port to port. I'd say there is a port that's happening. Port of Chinook. It's on the coast.
Okay.
And Port of Ilwaco right now. Port of Ilwaco has a memorandum of understanding where they're actually managing the books and everything else for the Port of Chinook. They took all their employees, which I don't think there was many. So I did meet one of the commissioners from Port of Chinook who was in attendance, and they're just trying to get back in the, able to function stage. So that's kind of a rare situation. I'd say more often you see that there's ports that don't have, and I think Port of Great View is one of them. They don't have staff.
Sure.
There's just elected commission. So they do their minutes, they do their meetings, they do anything they have to do as business. The commission does it. It just varies, we're, and I think Commissioner Taylor said it last week, we're probably one of the larger of the smaller ports, just based on the fact that, wow, we have 8 people, or whatever. But yeah, it's just kind of all over the board. And I think that there's quite a few that have maybe a part-time office person, and that's Hoodsport. Even Allen, I don't know that they're there full-time either. So
when you walk away from these and you kind of reflect, you go, we're doing okay.
Yeah. Definitely.
You see a lot of problems in other ports that they're dealing with.
And I think we've just kind of got a good system going. And you look at problems, not even so much budget or staffing, but you look at, big things like public records and keeping track of documents and policies and state audits and things that you're looking at internally. And we're doing pretty good. Day to day, you think, oh my gosh, we have way too much going on. But yeah, I think that we're doing really good. And for our lack of staff, we still have very big holes in our staffing right now that are soon to be filled, and we'll move on to that as soon as we're ready.
Sure.
But I think that we're feeling pretty good about things. Yeah,
good.
So.
Well, anything else going on up at the port you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so. The poor, run-up apron project is still going, and I think it's going fine, except for this weather.
Sure.
They just really need a break.
It's got to be hard.
Yeah. So other than that, the boathouses, the count down there of people that just still need to work on theirs is just getting slimmer and slimmer, and they've only got a couple months left.
Right.
But
okay.
It just really seems like things are turning around and going great. So yeah.
Nice. Well, Wendy, I'll let you out of here so you can try to get your way back uptown without getting washed away.
Right.
Wendy Smith from the Port of Shelton during this week's Port of Call. We surface on out of here, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.